Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
Hello and welcome to the Extreme Sports Performance Podcast. My name is Ryan Blake. I'm the founder and director of Extreme Sports Performance, as well as the host of this show. The mission of this is to empower high-performing action and endurance sports athletes to elevate their competitive edge through advanced performance protection and opportunity-driven systems. By harnessing the expertise, insights and strategies of real-world professionals to help athletes release limits and unlock potential to achieve peak performance in their sport. The vision of this is to be the ultimate resource for adrenaline junkies and weekend warriors, providing practical applied sports science strategies to overcome challenges and solve problems without sacrificing personal well-being. We strive to build a thriving community of extreme sports enthusiasts who embrace the balance between pushing the boundaries and maximising enjoyment in what they love to do. In this episode, I'm speaking with Emma O'Toole. Emma is a strength and conditioning coach for endurance sports. We discuss holistic approach to endurance sports coaching, tailored training for diverse athletes, mindset and preparation, defining ultra endurance events, strength training for endurance athletes, collaboration in technology and fitness, and much more. Okay, here we go. Emma, welcome to the Extreme Sports Performance Podcast. It's a pleasure to have you on the show. Please can you start by letting everyone know who you are, what you do, and a bit of a brief overview of your background and experience.
Hi Ryan, firstly thank you very much for having me on. I am a strength and conditioning coach for endurance athletes and a standalone running, cycling, triathlon coach as well. Brief overview of my careers. I've been in this game for 13 to 14 years now, and that has come from both the professional side of things, obviously in the career, and then also independently my own personal athletic career as well in endurance sports, starting with, I suppose, the traditional approach of, in terms of running, the distances, the 5K, the 10K, the half marathon, the marathon, the ultra marathon. I very much followed that linear approach to the distances in that regard. However, with triathlon, it was more jumping into the deep end, so to speak. So my first ever experience with triathlon was a sprint distance, but then after that it was jumping into the 70.3, so the middle distance, and then the longer distance above. And a few injuries over the years, which has then sort of spurred on the strength and conditioning side of things, and how that awareness in that area has really started to flourish and grow in recent years. So personal injuries from impact crashes on the bike, for instance, during races, unfortunate accident, training accident a few years back, just before I was supposed to do the Almere long distance triathlon in Holland. And resulted in a few bad injuries, and then really found that pushing the strength and conditioning helped to reduce that, combined obviously with the benefits of the strength and conditioning. And then not only from an injury resilience point of view, but I have found that even now at 31 years old, I'm setting sort of marathon PBs, even though the training obviously and the injury history is completely different to what it was 5-10 years ago. So there's the performance side of the strength and conditioning work as well. But I would say definitely it was that combination of my own experience, my career, and then a combining of the two, that I wanted to be a endurance coach that specializes in an area which impacts so many long distance athletes and short distance athletes, but in particular long distance athletes. And I wanted to be that person that could help change that for however many people decide to come on board.
Brilliant. Well, thank you. That's a really, really great start and really, really interesting overview. I'm really looking forward to your answer for this next question, because I think you're probably going to come out at this from an athlete and a coach point of view, but like, how would you define coaching for endurance sport based on all of your experiences?
This was one that I had to sit and think about, definitely, because as you said, it's two different hats.
Mm.
And I think my athlete hat is saying it's an objectifiable outcome. So it's that A to B. I'm here. I want to do a long distance triathlon. That's my outcome. So it's quantifiable. I've got that objectifiable outcome. So I think in that regard, coaching is you're taking me on that journey from where I am to where I want to be. However, my coaching hat is, oh, hold on a minute, the outcome is obviously the outcome, and that's what we're striving towards, but there's so much more to it. It's much more holistic than that.
Yeah.
It's that well-being, it's that support network for the athlete, it's that person that they can offload to, it's being their motivator, their number one fan. I think as well, because of my experience and my background with the highs and lows in the sport, even outside of injuries, but you've gone to a race, you've nailed everything down in your training plan, but it's just not happening. Why is that? Okay, we need to go back to the drawing board, or let's actually look at the other factors that are impacting your life. And it might be stress management, it could be relationships, whatever it is, but it's more of a holistic coaching approach rather than just, I'm going to get you to run a marathon. Yeah. Okay, that's great. But then who are you at the end of that marathon? What condition you are in? Where's that longevity? Do you want to run a marathon again next year? Or because me as a coach, I want you to be able to do that. It's not just that short term, it's that bigger picture thinking. So I suppose that's the two differences. The athlete in me is like, I want to get from here to here, A to B, that's my outcome. And I want to do it well. I want to get the goal, the performance orientated goal that I have in mind. However, the coach in me is like, okay, great, but we need to look at one, your starting point, how achievable is that with regards to all the other things that are going on in your life, training balance, injury history, stress management, etc. And even if just that goal isn't achievable at the moment for you or not, which, most of the time it largely is, depending, most people don't come in and set really unrealistic goals, but it's that support along the way and those milestones. So it's more than just an objectifiable A to B as a coach, in my opinion.
It's not an easy question to answer, is it? And I often ask quite a lot of our guests that question, and not one person has the same response. It's just very multidimensional. I keep thinking to myself how I would answer that question. Every month I change the answer. But it ultimately comes back down to my personal application model that I use with our extreme sports performance clients. And it all starts from the core. So the core is helping people release their limits, whether it's an athlete or a coach. And then there's lots of other layers then which ripple out. So we have ultimately maximizing your opportunity, maximizing your performance, maximizing protection. And then there's further ripples that go outside of that. And it's not the same for everyone else. Every athlete or every coach we work with is different. So I think that's so important to have like that individualized approach.
Yeah, absolutely.
Otherwise, you really are not, I think, serving the purpose of what it is you've been asked to do. And so with regards to the people you currently work with now, could you give us an example of who they are and what type of events they do and what kind of level those events are?
So it's quite a range really now at the moment. So it could be anything from a beginner endurance athlete, so literally somebody leading up with the trainers for the first time who has that goal in mind of, I do want to run a marathon. And then that comes down to that sort of A to B approach. And it's like, we're going to get you there, but it's going to be a process, it's going to be a journey, and that needs to be individualized and tailored to you to ensure that we do get you there healthy, fit, at the end of that process, all the way up to high performing skin suit wearing for their country representing athletes. So it's a real nice mixture. It's a really nice combined blended approach, I find, which is certain points of the year if you find that you work with maybe more higher level achieving athletes, and then more recreational depending on where they are in different seasons and periods in time.
Okay. And what do you see, and this is a two-sided question, and what do you see those athletes or athletes in that environment, they might not be the ones that you work with, what do you see them do well? And what do you see them not so well?
The high performing,
Yeah.
the high achieving, yeah. I think that they are exceptionally well driven, they're dedicated, they want to do it. However, this is that double-edged sword, so to speak, because that can be to their detriment.
Yeah.
So that's when they need somebody, a coach, be it me that I'm working on their strength and they've got an endurance coach, or if they're with everything with me, then we can really go in and be like, well, hold on a minute. Again, it comes down to that bigger picture thinking. So we were chatting a little bit about this before the start of the call, but we're seeing it quite a lot in the emergence of the Ironman World Championships. So obviously Patrick Lange decided not to do the T100 compared to Sam Laidlow, who has done the T100 this season. Patrick Lange, 38 years old, goes and smashes the makes it look easy on the marathon leg at the end of the Ironman in Kona. He made that decision not to participate in the T100 because he had his focus. That was his A goal. Yeah. Sam Laidlow obviously smashed the bike in Kona, blew up, and then consequently a few days ago he announced that he didn't participate in the T105 finale today. So and I think this is where even those high performing athletes, everyone needs to sort of be not kept in check, but it's that eye on where do you want to be? What's the ultimate goal for you in this season or in this block that you're in? And where then can we help support you to get there? Because I think Laura Phillips is really interesting. Obviously won the Ironman World Championship in Nice, but she did actually participate in the T100s. But I think she was using them more as primers. So see where she's at. Obviously it was the demand of those is different to the Ironman World Championships, but she obviously didn't participate in the Ibiza Spain one I think it was 4 days after the Nice World Championship, so I can't blame her for that. I'm sure she wanted to let off a little bit of steam, but she's done the Vegas and Dubai yesterday and came 7th. So she's not going into those thinking like, I need to win everything.
Yep.
It's not just, obviously an athlete's repertoire is a reflection of their quality, but also it's prioritizing those key races. You can't go in and win absolutely everything.
How important do you think goal setting is in that instance? Is that something that is absolutely essential, or is that something that you could get away with not doing?
I think that depends on the level and what in terms of what you're looking to achieve. But I'm absolutely a huge fan for goal setting because periodization, what we're basing our training around when we're going to peak ready for those races.
Yeah.
It's again another bit of a double-edged sword because for some people you're putting all your eggs in that one basket, and then what if things go wrong, so to speak, in that one race? How do you recover as an athlete to then carry on the rest of your season or to go into your off season, wherever that race falls? However, I think that's when then having that real support network around you. And I think it's part of being an athlete, isn't it? There's highs and there's lows. As we alluded to earlier, just because you've done everything right, it might just not be your day. You might have a puncture. There could be something way out of your control, but you need to be somebody who's resilient to be able to handle those unexpected changes, because racing is like that's going to throw whatever at you and you either crumble or you roll with it. And I often like to say to my athletes, what's your A goal, what's your B goal, and what's your C goal? And then we've got always something that, the C goal could just be completion. I want to get through this race because the last 3 I've DNF'd, for instance. Okay, well, that's a great goal to have. Yeah. What's, the A goal in that? Well, actually, I want to hit a PB in the run leg, for instance. So I think definitely having that more well-rounded approach of not just, yes, you're putting all your eggs in one basket in the sense of it's one race, you're pinning a lot on that one race or that one event, but in that you've encompassed different goals and different outcomes. So then you've got that sort of motivation and that encouragement to move forward later on. And you can be like, yeah, okay, that didn't go 100% to plan, but look at this that I've got out of it. Look at these positives. And then you can take those into your motivation, fuel the fire for the next set of events that you've got coming up.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. And especially the thing that I think people forget is like the amount of uncontrollables that can happen in an event like this because they last so long and you're going to make mistakes no matter how well prepared you are.
Mm.
And I suppose it's just adapting to those mistakes. I mean, there's been cases of it in the Ironman events this year where athletes have chosen just to stop after the cycle because smashing through a marathon to finish 11th isn't really going to align with their goals they've set, and it's actually probably going to hinder their other goals or their other ambitions further down the year in the season. So it's a tricky one, isn't it, to get the balance right? And we often say, and our listeners will probably roll their eyes when they hear me say this again, but what I always say to the athletes we work with is it's about falling to your level of preparation rather than rising to your level of performance. And I think that coincides really nicely with your A, B, and C goal approach, because there are only a certain amount of things you can control.
Yeah, absolutely.
Bro. So just moving on, so I could talk about that forever. The psychology of endurance sport, it fascinates me. So what does it take someone to be world-class level at these endurance events, in your opinion?
So in my opinion, I believe the margins now are so fine between athletes that are world class, and we see that constantly with records tumbling year on year. So I believe that
It is Ryan Seacrest here. There was a recent social media trend which consisted of flying on a plane with no music, no movies, no entertainment. But a better trend would be going to ChumbaCasino.com. It's like having a mini social casino in your pocket. Chumba Casino has over 100 online casino-style games, all absolutely free. It's the most fun you can have online and on a plane. So grab your free welcome bonus now at ChumbaCasino.com. Sponsored by Chumba Casino.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 21 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
the difference really is that resilience, it's that hunger, the drive to learn, the confidence to implement new strategies, new techniques that maybe you hadn't necessarily leaned on in the past, and then ultimately mindset.
Okay. And this follows on or proceeds really nicely to this next question is, where do you see the sport going in the next 5 to 10 years? What are the biggest changes that you foresee happening? And have they already started to happen? Would it be something to do with the athletes themselves? Would it be something to do with the training and the science behind it? Would it be something to do with the tech?
I think it's always going to be mindset related. So I think it's going to be the athletes themselves. Yes, of course, we see even that trickling down to the recreational level with super shoes and strength training and how much those are benefiting recreational athletes, because obviously the pros have been doing that for years on end anyway, at least with regards to strength training. So I just think the biggest development is going to be that the boundaries of endurance will continue to be tested. So what is endurance? We're looking at marathons now, and I think there's definitely going to be another sub 2 hour shortly coming along within the next couple of years, I'd say, definitely. So I think that definitely, but then, sorry, get back to the point of the sub 2 hour. Would you define a 2 hour marathon as an endurance event when the recreational athlete would be like, can I run a half marathon in 2 hours? Well, they're running double the distance, the professionals. And I think in that is a huge, it's a whole podcast episode, no doubt in itself, of what is endurance, what is ultra endurance, where are those boundaries?
Yeah, sure. So this is something I really wanted to dive into with you today in this conversation, and it's something we've been speaking about a lot leading up to this. Is like, how do we define that ultra endurance? Like, what is the current definition, and do you think that is accurate? And would you tweak it or change it based on your experience?
So this is definitely a tough one, and I have done a bit of extra research on this one. So there's back in 2005, it was 19 years ago, there was a study that came out by Zariski et al. That basically was defining it, ultra endurance, as anything that exceeds 6 hours.
Okay.
So to me, instantly reading that, I thought, okay, it's 19 years old. I wonder if that's changed. based on sort of how the boundaries are constantly being pushed. We're seeing more and more recreational athletes wanting to sort of get the stone to the UTMB, and more people participating in ultra marathons than ever before. Those ultra events have become a lot more inclusive and just a lot more uptake and participation in general. So there's more of a recent study in 2022, I believe, that said it's the 6 hour mark, an event exceeding 6 hours, and or running fixed distances on multiple days. So obviously at the moment, in the running sphere, in the running space, anything over the marathon distance of 26.2 miles is defined as an ultra event, which I think I do prefer more than the time-based. I don't know about yourself, but I think having something objectifiable in that regard, it is keeping more of a standard. It's keeping it more of a standardization of that's an ultra event because you've hit that metric, you've hit that distance.
Yeah, sure.
Whereas if we go for time, too open, it's too individualized to the athlete, which of course we want sport to be individual and encouraging, and we want to make sure that everyone has the option and feels that they can participate in it. But equally, if somebody goes and runs a marathon in 7 hours, 8 hours, would you define them as an ultra athlete, an ultra endurance athlete? I personally wouldn't, because they've only hit, not only, but they've hit that distance of the marathon, which is not an ultra distance. And this actually really surprised me with cycling, because cycling was one that didn't seem to have a very fixed term. So the Worldwide Ultra Cycling Association again defines it as a challenge of at least 6 hours duration, with distance limited events stretching over at least 200k, so 125 miles, and to be completed in a single effort to be considered as an ultra competition. So I think in the cycling sphere, there's again that progression, a bit like in running, where people, it's like they want to hit the 100 or the 50k and then the 100k, and then there might be the century. But then I guess there's not really, obviously you've got Audaxes, but there's not really many necessarily loads of events above that. I know we talked about the 312 New Yorker before the start of this call. So I just find, again, though, in cycling, the fact that they've put that as a 6 hour duration, where some, I'd say the century mark would probably be where a lot of competitive weekend warrior athletes sit for the century mark, personally, from my experience. Obviously you can go above it and beyond that, but I definitely think it's almost like the time duration suits for the, or well above and beyond suits for sort of the elite. Because if you think you've got a 2 hour marathoner, well, then obviously they're going to do an ultra distance in way under the 6 hour mark. But then for the everyday, it's almost like the time is not necessarily reflective of the distance, because they might only cover 3/4 of that distance in that time duration. So I do think, I don't know about you, but I do think putting a quantifiable distance metric on there is, we have to have something, don't we, that sort of defines these events.
It's a really fascinating answer. Like, I agree with you. I personally think ultra is too vague. I think the two things that need to be added to that definition are the environment in which it's happening in, or the athletes being exposed to, whether it's extreme altitude, temperature, terrain, and then also the modality of what it is they're doing, whether it's a swim, a hike, a run, a cycle, or a combination of a row, a combination of whatever it is. I think that's ultra is vague, and I think adding in those slightly additional layers in the definition would probably make it easier to understand, but it would also make it, I suppose, easier to, what's the word I'm looking for? Digest, I guess, as well.
I suppose know you've hit that achievement. As in, that's what I think what makes the marathon so special to so many people, is that they know they've run 26.2 or completed 26.2 miles. If you go and say you're an ultra athlete because you've done something, row, swim, bike, run for 6 hours, then how do you how do you gauge that? Because as you said, Ryan, you could have covered 150 miles on the bike and I could have covered 99.
Yeah.
But we've both been out for 6 hours.
Yeah.
But then does that make you more of an ultra athlete than me? Arguably, yes, in the sense of distance covered. But then if we take in the terrain again, because that's just, spot on. If, for instance, if mine was a Everest attempt that I've just been going, the distance sort of then is irrelevant because you're looking at that vertical ascent. So that's really interesting. I've actually got an athlete of mine at the moment who has done the regular Everest. So I'll give a little shout out to him. And he's recently just done a 10K, and next year we're training him for a triple.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So very, very, very big event. So triple Everest attempt.
The first thing I was going to ask you then is what timeline is that over, which is a bit ironic because that's getting back to that original ultra definition.
So he's going to go for June and see 3 to 4 days.
Oh wow, that close! Wow.
Oh yes, it'll be back-to-back attempts, mitigated by a couple of hours sleep window.
Incredible. Crazy physiology going on there.
Taking inspiration from Jack, the ultra cyclist, I believe, is he's a big inspiration for him. But yeah, you're 100% right that actually. So on the one hand, distance can be very enabling, and we've put that quantifiable target, on there. But actually, we need to really think about the terrain because obviously, if you're ascending, you're going to cover less distance because it's going to take you longer to reach or to cover that distance in the first instance. So it's a very challenging topic, I think, to then define. But then I would say there's probably general awareness in that anyway. If someone said, we're going to go and hike Mount Everest, you think of that. It's sort of tied into what it is.
Yeah, there's an element of common sense that's obvious, right? Yeah, cool. Okay, well, that's food for thought. Maybe we can write a research paper on it one day and come up with a new definition. If anyone's listening and they have...
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.
More information, or they've got other references about this topic, please let us know because I'd be really interested.
And opinions. It'd be great to get your listeners' opinion, what they think. And I know, for instance, the cycling time trials, they have their 24-hour national events, and I would define those as ultra endurance events, definitely, because of the time duration and the time period that those riders are. How much distance can you cover in 24 hours? But then again, that's not necessarily taking in the terrain because they're going to largely look. It's done on the most distance. The standing, is done on the most distance you covered, will place you higher up in the standing. So you're going to choose the more favourable terrain rather than loads of hilly, undulating routes, I'm sure. But no, definitely be really interesting because I think it's a grey area, but it's one that we are seeing so many people want to get more involved with now. As I said, the participation in the ultra events has massively grown, which is great.
They're very exciting and they are very unique. So if you are listening, whatever platform you're listening on, please comment below with your thoughts because we'd love to know and continue this conversation. So last question, Emma, is what would be your top piece of advice to anyone listening to make them a better endurance athlete?
My top piece of advice would be to include strength training year round, but also ensuring that strength training is periodized. So it's aligned to your season. Obviously, that's a whole other conversation in terms of the periodization models that you'd follow. However, just ensuring that we're turning up heat on certain qualities, we're reducing heat on other qualities depending on where you are. And that's from a performance point of view and obviously an injury resilience point of view as well. But definitely that emergence of strength training is so important. And we really need to sort of overcome those myths that exist around strength training for endurance athletes and get all the benefits from it, because it's your endurance enabler. For me, strength training is your endurance enabler.
I love that term. It's a really good one to finish on. We work with a lot of endurance athletes ourselves, and it's sometimes the reactions you get from, and I'm sure we've had conversations about this over the last few weeks on various social media platforms, but the reactions that you can sometimes get from them when you suggest strength training, especially different variations of maybe what they think it is quite an interesting response. And I think it's a stigma that is slowly becoming better. It's people's views on it are starting to change. It is definitely a huge advantage if it's done properly.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
And that's sort of where we built to endure. That's what that was founded from, really, is that you are built to endure the distance, the performance goal that you want to achieve, whatever it is, but you are resilient enough to handle that. And then, we do see it all the time. Sometimes runners come to you and they can't even get into a reverse lunge position because of tightness in the hip complex or the hip flexors in particular. And it's sort of like you're then going to throw this massive load at your body and you want to achieve a very high performance goal in that. But, joint position dictates muscle function. So there's a whole other podcast to discuss on that one, which I know we're both singing from the same hymn sheet there. I'm
not going to get down that rabbit hole. It's maybe one for a future episode, but it's a really interesting topic. So just to finish, if people listening would like to know more about you, get in touch with you, maybe with some follow-up questions, or maybe even start working with you, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I am on the social medias. So Facebook, we've actually got a private community for endurance athletes on there. It's just under Running and Cycling Beyond 30 with Emma. Also on LinkedIn, I would say it would be the best two platforms to get in touch. And we've got our website, either www.builttoendure.pro or Emma O'Toole Fitness. And then you can get in touch through both of those as well.
Awesome. Well, for everyone listening, I'll put those links in the show notes directly so you can click on them and get straight to those pages. But Emma, just to say thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure having you on the show, and best of luck for the rest of the year.
Thank you, and to you, and thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed the show. It would be really helpful if you could please leave a rating and or review on whatever platform you're listening on. Is there someone you know who would benefit from hearing what you've just heard? Then share the love by sending them a link. Be sure to check out our website www.extremesportsperformance.com that has details about the ESP blog, more information about this podcast, taking our performance overview online assessment, joining our online extreme sports community, our online training programs, our online nutrition plans, our flagship online athletic development coaching program, our in-person consultancy services, and how to get in touch if you have any questions. Follow us on social media at LinkedIn, Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and YouTube. Links to these can be found at the bottom of all of our web pages and via any search engine. Until next time, go well.
Hello, it is Ryan, and I was on a flight the other day playing one of my favorite social spin slot games on ChumbaCasino.com. I looked over at the person sitting next to me, and you know what they were doing? They were also playing Chumba Casino. Coincidence? I think not. Everybody's loving having fun with it. Chumba Casino is home to hundreds of casino-style games that you can play for free anytime, anywhere, even at 30,000 feet. So sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com to claim your free welcome bonus. That's ChumbaCasino.com and live the Chumba life.
No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. See terms and conditions. 18+.